Every once in a while, you come across a piece of fieldcraft so brutally simple and so effective that it forces you to rethink what you thought you knew about historical survival. This is one of those techniques. It didn't come from textbooks or training manuals. It came from cold, misery, desperation, and the unforgiving reality of frontline conditions. The field blanket trick you're about to learn wasn't invented in a warm barracks or a supply depot. It was born in frozen foxholes, snow-choked trenches, and wind-torn outposts where soldiers weren't fighting the enemy as much as they were fighting the cold itself. In many theaters of war, especially during winter campaigns, a soldier could go into hypothermic shock in under an hour. Men became disoriented, sluggish, or dangerously sleepy, all early warnings that their bodies were shutting down. On some nights, men simply didn't wake up. Commanders and medics had no illusions about the cold. They knew it was just as lethal as bullets. So they looked for any method, any trick, any improvised technique that could keep a man warm long enough to survive until morning. It didn't matter if it looked primitive. It didn't matter if it came from old mountain shepherds or frontier soldiers. If it worked, it was used. You've heard of wool blankets, greatcoats, overcoats, trench stoves, foxhole burners. But the method we're talking about today was different. It required no fire, no fuel, no metal stove, no special gear. It was a clever rearrangement of equipment every soldier already had. And surprisingly, it turned out powerful enough to keep frostbite and hypothermia at bay during long, deadly nights when temperatures dropped far below what a single wool blanket could usually handle. What makes this worth revisiting today is simple. The human body hasn't changed. The laws of heat loss haven't changed. What worked for troops stuck in frozen forests and wind-blasted mountains can still work today for bushcrafters, long-distance hikers, hunters, and anyone who wants to understand what truly kept men alive before modern synthetics existed. This is not nostalgia. It's pure functional fieldcraft. And once you understand how it works, you'll realize why so many war veterans swore by it. The core idea behind the technique was to trap warm air by folding the wool blanket into a sealed insulation shell instead of wearing it loosely. The forgotten method was simple in theory, but very specific in execution. Soldiers folded their wool blanket lengthwise, then folded it again, creating a thick 4-layer panel. Instead of throwing it over the shoulders like a shawl, which leaves huge air gaps, they wrapped it tightly around their torso and underarms, anchoring it with their belt, pack straps, or even a rifle sling. This created what's called a core wrap, a sealed insulation chamber around the body's most critical heat-producing zone. It prevented warm air from escaping upward along the chest and neck, one of the biggest causes of nighttime heat loss. When a blanket hangs loosely, warm air escapes faster than you can produce it. But once the wool is folded tightly and secured, your body begins heating the air trapped inside those layers. The blanket shifts from being a drafty piece of cloth to a passive insulator with multiple warm air chambers. Soldiers who used the method described an almost shocking jump in warmth. Those on early morning watch rotations, where movement stopped and the cold hit hardest, said, "It made the difference between trembling violently and sitting motionless without suffering." Mountain troops in Norway used it. German and Soviet infantry on the Eastern Front used it. Winter patrols in Italy and the Korean War relied on it as well. Over and over, the reports said the same thing. This simple wrap worked dramatically better than a blanket used the normal way. Modern hikers can apply it too, by folding a wool blanket into a thick panel, wrapping it firmly around the torso, and securing it with a belt, paracord, or backpack straps. You essentially create a low-tech insulated vest. The key is eliminating air gaps while still allowing your chest to expand normally as you breathe. When done right, this method can extend your comfort window through the night even without a proper sleeping bag. A detail that often gets lost in retellings is the layering order. Soldiers didn't put this wrap on over their coat. They actually removed the coat first, wrapped the blanket directly over their base layer, and then put the coat back on top. This matters because wool insulation only works efficiently when it's close enough to the body to trap heat quickly. If the blanket sits on top of a big coat filled with empty air, the heat never reaches it. But when wool sits close to the body and the coat acts as a wind-blocking shell, the system becomes dramatically more efficient. Field reports from Russia, Norway, the Balkans, and Korea all repeat the same observation. The method worked best when the blanket became the inner insulating layer, not the outer one. If you're recreating this today, treat the wool blanket as your mid-layer. Wrap it tightly around your core, then put your jacket or parka over it. In long-term cold exposure, this method actually conserves calories because your body spends far less energy reheating the air it keeps losing from a poorly layered setup. One of the biggest killers in cold environments is temperature cycling. When you crawl into your shelter or under covers, your body warms up the air around you. As you fall asleep, your metabolism slows, your heat output drops, and your temperature falls into dangerous territory without you even realizing it. Early morning is when most cold-related deaths occur. Soldiers who used the blanket wrap found that their core temperature stayed far more consistent through the night. They slept better, woke more alert, and burned fewer calories just trying to stay alive. Campers or emergency preparedness folks can replicate this today by forming a tight core wrap before lying down. Use the remaining portion of the blanket for the legs, or combine the wrap with a simple windshell or tarp. The goal isn't luxury. It's maintaining a stable thermal pocket throughout the night, especially during those brutally cold early morning dips. This method deserves to be preserved because it uses nothing but discipline, wool, and correct layering. It fell out of public memory not because it stopped working, but because wartime improvisations were rarely written down with precision. New synthetic fabric systems eventually replaced wool. Outdoor gear became commercialized, and many old tricks simply disappeared from survival culture. But from a functional point of view, this technique stands out for its sheer practicality. It requires no fire, no fuel, no extra blanket, no specialized equipment, just proper folding, firm securing, and the discipline to put the coat back on over the insulation. For historians, bushcrafters, reenactors, and survivalists, this is exactly the kind of forgotten knowledge worth keeping alive. And that's why we made this episode. Warfield survival exists to pull real, proven field techniques out of the dusty corners of history and put them back into the hands of people who truly value them. If you found this guide valuable and you want more historically grounded survival methods that were actually used, not theories, not myths, but the real tricks that kept real people alive, make sure you subscribe, share this with fellow enthusiasts, and help keep these forgotten skills alive.